The next group of lures that I want to review for catching trophy bass are Bullshad Swimbaits. Bullshad's located in Georgia, not too far from where I used to live, and I was fortunate enough through the page to meet with Mike, the owner, Mike Buka, and actually got to fish with him some. And I learned a ton about swim bait fishing from him, and tips that you can use to improve your catch rates with swim baits. You know, straight from the guy who made them. But before I get into that, I want to use this large swim bait as an example of fish for fish physiology purposes, so we can kind of break down how this works. See how big this lure is. There's my hand right behind it. It's a large. I think it's like 8 or 9 inches long. And most of the time, when I've got one of these baits tied on, you get comments like you're fishing too big. It's a saltwater lure. So on and so forth. I think that there's a kind of a misunderstanding about largemouth bass and what they're capable of eating. Scientists call it the gape. It's basically just the width of the mouth. If you looked at the mouth like a circle, the diameter of the circle is the only thing that limits bass from eating anything. So if a bass had a mouth, say, that big, it could not eat this bait, because they'll either take the baits head first or they will adjust them in their mouth to get them head first. But most of the time, bass can catch their prey head on, head first, and get it going down that way. So the only thing that really limits a bass from being able to eat this is his mouth couldn't get around it. And as you can see, even this long bait, it doesn't take a very large mouth. 1.5, maybe 2 pounds could eat that shiner imitation there. So that's the first misconception that I wanted to touch on, was bass eat very big fish for their size, almost their same size. You see bass eat each other in the tanks when you were picking them up at the fish hatchery. They can eat a fish almost the exact same length as them because their mouths are so big. So keep that in mind when you go to an upsized bait. You're not limiting yourself to the biggest bass in the lake. You'll actually catch quite a few small bass on the oversized baits. Even bass that literally couldn't eat this fish at all, sometimes you'll hook and catch. So the size of the bait, you've heard big bait, big fish. That's true. And that brings me to my second point that I wanted to talk about, and that's the lateral line. We've touched on it before, but I want to touch on it again. Fish have a specialized sense of cells that run the length of their body and on their head that can sense vibration in the water. And it's extremely sensitive. Extremely. And by sensitive, I mean, like, think about like a bat. A bat has terrible vision, can't see very well, but uses echolocation to catch mosquitoes out of the air. That's how sensitive a bass's lateral line system is. In fact, a bass can be blind, can be completely blind, and still stay alive because it can sense its environment so well with the lateral line system. It doesn't need vision to feed. I think that's extremely important to understand, and I think it's way overlooked in bass fishing. You don't hear guys talking very much about it. I use the term vibration signature, and I don't have any like hard science on that in the form of a study or something that I could point you to, but I think that the type of vibration that the lure puts into the water matters a great deal, even more than the color of the bait, because we all know that the water can be very stained with like 2 inches of visibility in lakes when it's after rains and things, and bass will still bite, bass will still feed, and in situations like that, they're essentially feeding blind. If you've also been bass fishing very long, you know that in the stained water, dark water conditions, going with something with a little higher vibration, blades that turn like spinner baits or extra large swim baits like these, you generally, chatterbaits, another example, you generally get more bites on vibration in stained or dark water, right? So that vibration signature that the bait throws off, to me, is extremely important. How is it vibrating in the water? And I don't know if there's a tool that those guys use to measure it. I'm not a lure maker or anything, but I just know that baits that tend to trigger large bass strikes have a unique vibration signature, and Bullshad swim baits certainly have that. I think it's probably by the way that they're made. They're not a normal uh, bait and then like a hollow bait. They're actually each section is poured and is thick. It's heavy. It's a I don't know the right word. It's not plastic. I guess it is plastic, but it's not like a hollow plastic bait like we're normally accustomed to fishing to. These baits are solid, like a polymer type plastic that are poured. Each individual section is poured and then they're assembled later. So I think that makes a great difference in the type of vibration signature that's placed into the water by the bait. And maybe this isn't the best lure for like a beginner swim bait fisherman, so let's touch on that. There's a couple other options through Bullshad that you can use. These types of large baits are going to require a unique kind of rod. Um, they're a big heavy like an 8 foot or 9 foot rod that's capable of handling a heavy large bait like this, right? But that's okay if you're just getting into it. You don't have to just use a huge lure like this. The next one down is just a little 4-inch model. And I have to say, this little model right here is my favorite out of all of them. It really catches fish of all sizes. It really catches fish of different species. It does a fantastic job, and how you fish this bait is critical. Um, Mike explained it to me. Let me see if I can get it to stand up. So, is this one going to stand? It's not going to stand. I'll just hold it. So, I'll use just a spinning rod, like a medium action spinning rod with that bait. It does fine. Oh, it will stand good. Cover water with the bait. All right. Let's imagine that this is the surface. Let's see. This is the surface of the water, and this is the bottom of the pond. Okay. Where this bait is now, I don't want this bait down here near the bottom very much. Not saying you can't catch fish down there on it, but when I was fishing with Mike, he was showing me, and I kind of learned this on my own, but he kind of dialed it in for me. If you fish in a worm down on the bottom, right, a plastic worm, that plastic worm is kind of in a trap position. And what do I mean by trapped? Well, it can't get away going any lower. The bottom kind of blocks it. It can go left and right or forward and back, but it's trapped to the bottom. And that's pretty easy to visualize, and I'd known that for my whole life. But Mike pointed out while we were fishing, move the bait up in the water column and fish it just under the surface. It's also in a trap position here. And I never really thought about it that way. Being a subsurface bait or right at the surface, it can't get away any higher either. In the exact same way that it's entrapped at the bottom, it's also entrapped at the surface. So that's important to understand because he designed the lures to be fished up there. And the second thing you need to understand when fishing these baits is the rate of retrieve. And I learned pretty quickly in using them that they don't blow out. And what I mean by blow out is they don't, you can crank them as fast as you want to crank them, and they run true. They don't mess up. They don't start running crooked or go in a different direction. And it's pretty obvious that Mike designed them to be that way when you fish with him and you see how he fishes. It's extremely fast. And one thing that I do is I will switch over from spinning tackle sometimes or make sure that my spinning rod has like a larger spool. That's okay. That'll work as well. So it's pulling a little bit more line in and really move these fast. If you're using a bait caster type reel, go to the higher gear ratio reels. Your 8-to-1 or 9-to-1 reels that you normally would accustom, with like jig fishing or pitching or flipping or something like that. I'll go to really high gear reels that pull a lot of line in with the swim bait as well, and absolutely burn it, roast it. Add some pauses. You're going to give it maybe 3 to 5 quick reel turns as fast as you can. Pause it, and then repeat. That you're going to find that when you've got the fish in an entrap position up here, and you're moving it quickly, you're forcing that bass to a decision. Either eat it or don't eat it, but it's not sitting here very long for you to look at it. And that kind of forces the bass into a reaction strike. And that idea I never thought of until I fished with Mike. And I've incorporated that into my swim bait fishing, especially with these baits. And I've had great success moving it. I'm not saying you should burn it all the time. Definitely vary your rates of retrieve. But keep that in the back of your mind that every 5 casts, 10 casts, whatever, absolutely burn it. And I think you'll see your catch rates go up significantly. Now, this bullshad, I think it's about $50. They're not cheap baits. So if you're just first getting into it and you can't stomach throwing a $50 bait, go to the catch company. Makes this spin-off one of the bullshad, and it's, as you can see, I'm gonna put the pen down. It's about the same size. It was mimicked off this 4-inch. Okay, now this is a hollow body bait. This is not. This is that polymer type. It's all hard. It's a solid thing. Where this one is more like a typical, lure. And I would say they're equal. They really work well. They both work really well. I can't say one is better than the other one. I will say that I do like this one on windy days better. You can throw it farther and control it a little bit better because it has some added weight. But I've fished either one of these on a medium action spinning rod and just burn it right under the surface and had great results. Just kind of fan cast the areas. And don't worry about water depth. As you're fishing this, I've seen bass come from 15, 18, even 20 feet deep straight to the surface to hit these baits. Keep it right at the surface like that. Keep it moving, and I think you'll find great success fishing with bullshad swim baits. I have thoroughly enjoyed fishing with these baits. It's a unique kind of way to fish, and it helps you cover water. It helps you find feeders. You really can't cast it in a bad direction. Just keep fishing it, keep it right on the surface, and I think you'll find some success. Thanks for following.